March 14th, 1943. London, England. 2 a.m. Mary Greyeyes stood in the shadows of a narrow alley behind the Regent Street dance hall, watching a young woman in a CWAC uniform stumble out a side door. The woman's lipstick was smudged. Her hands shook as she tried to button her jacket. A civilian man in a wool coat followed her out, pressed something into her palm, and disappeared back inside. The woman looked at whatever he'd given her, then crumpled it and dropped it on the wet pavement. She walked away quickly, her shoulders hunched against the drizzle. Mary waited until the woman turned the corner. Then she crossed the alley and picked up the crumpled paper. It was a chit, a handwritten note promising payment for services rendered at a rate far below what any legitimate job would pay. On the back, in pencil, balance owed £12. She had seen this before. Mary Greyeyes Reid was 22 years old. She was Cree, from the Muskeg Lake Reserve in Saskatchewan. In the fall of 1942, she had become the first Indigenous woman to enlist in the Canadian Women's Army Corps. The newspapers had loved it. They had posed her in traditional dress and called her an Indian princess, as if that were some kind of honor. The photo had run in papers across Canada and the United States. Mary had smiled for the camera because that was what they asked her to do. But the photo was a lie. She was not a princess. She was a private. She worked in the motor pool, fixing trucks and filing supply logs. And at night, when she could not sleep, she walked the streets of London and paid attention. She had grown up paying attention. On the reserve, silence was often safer than speech. She learned to watch faces, to notice what people did with their hands, to remember who came and went and why. The nuns at the boarding school had taught her that being noticed was dangerous. Mary had learned all of those lessons, and now, in London, in the middle of the war, she used them. The first time she noticed something wrong was in January. A girl named Helen, 18, fresh from Ontario, had started missing morning roll call. When she finally showed up, her eyes were red, and she would not talk to anyone. 2 weeks later, Helen was gone. Transferred, they said. But Mary had seen her the night before, crying in the lavatory, saying she owed money to a man who worked at a club near Piccadilly. She said she had taken a job there because the pay was good. She said it was just dancing. But then they told her she owed them for the dress, the shoes, the room they said she was using. And when she tried to leave, they told her she could not. Helen had vanished before Mary could ask more. But Helen was not the only one. By March, Mary had noticed 4 other women who fit the pattern. Young, new to the city, anxious about money. They would disappear for a night or two, then return looking hollow. Some of them stopped coming back at all. The officers did not seem to care, or they did not want to know. Either way, no one was asking questions. Mary decided she would. She was born in 1920 in a small house on the edge of Muskeg Lake. Mary was the second youngest. She also learned that the world outside the reserve did not think much of people like her. They told them their families were ignorant, and that the only way forward was to forget where they came from. Mary had not forgotten. She learned English. She learned how to make herself useful. And when the war came, she saw an opportunity, not for glory, not for propaganda, but for something else. A chance to prove that she could do things that other people said she could not. She enlisted in September 1942. The recruiters were surprised. They asked her if she was sure. They asked her if her family knew. They asked her if she understood what it meant to serve. Mary said yes to all of it. She passed the physical. She passed the interviews. And when they put her in uniform, she felt, for the first time in a long time, like she belonged to something larger than herself. But belonging came with complications. The propaganda photo had been taken in November, just after her arrival in England. The Army wanted to show that Indigenous people were contributing to the war effort. But Mary did it anyway, because she understood the game. If they wanted a symbol, she would be a symbol. But symbols could move in ways that people did not expect. By late February, Mary had started mapping the pattern. She kept a small notebook in her footlocker, hidden beneath her spare socks. In it, she recorded names, dates, locations. She noted which dance halls and clubs were mentioned most often. She noted which men seemed to be involved. She did not write down everything she suspected, because suspicion was not the same as proof. But she wrote down enough. 3 names kept appearing: the Mayfair Lounge, the Regent Street Dance Hall, and a private club called the Sterling Room. All 3 were in the West End. All 3 employed civilian men who acted as talent scouts, approaching young women in uniform and offering them part-time work. The pay they quoted was good, too good, and the women who took the jobs often found themselves trapped. The system was simple and brutal. A woman would be told she could earn extra money by working as a hostess or a dancer. She would be given an advance. Then she would be told that the advance was a loan. She would be charged for her clothes, her makeup, her room, her meals. The debt would grow faster than she could pay it off. And when she tried to leave, she would be told that she owed too much, that she had signed a contract, that there would be consequences if she did not fulfill her obligations. Some of the women gave in, some of them ran, and some of them disappeared. Mary decided to see for herself. On the night of March 18th, she put on civilian clothes and walked to the Mayfair Lounge. It was a narrow building with a red door and a small brass plaque. A man at the door looked her over and asked if she had an appointment. Mary said she was looking for work. The man smiled. He told her to come back the next night and ask for Eddie. She came back the next night. Eddie was a thin man in his 40s with slicked back hair and a gold ring on his pinky finger. Mary answered carefully. She said she was from Canada. She said she was new to the city. She said she could use extra income. Eddie nodded. He said he could help. He said there were always opportunities for girls who were willing to work hard. He said he could train her. Mary asked what happened if she changed her mind. Eddie's smile thinned. He said that would not be a problem. But he also said that if she took the job, she would be expected to honor her commitments. Mary thanked him and said she would think about it. Eddie handed her a card with an address on it. He told her to come by the next evening if she was interested. She did not go back. Instead, she went to the motor pool and found 3 women she trusted. Their names were Ruth, Doris, and Margaret. Mary told them what she had learned. She told them about the clubs, the debts, the missing women. She told them about Eddie and the card he had given her. She said she thought there were more men like Eddie. She said she thought they were running a network. And she said she thought the only way to stop it was to build a network of their own. Ruth asked what she had in mind. Mary said they needed to find the women who were already trapped and get them out. They needed to create a system, forged leave papers, shared door codes, buddy walk rotations, midnight runs. They needed to move quietly and leave no trace. Doris said it was risky. Mary said that was true. But she also said that if they did nothing, more women would disappear, and no one else was going to help them. The 3 women looked at each other. Then Ruth said yes. Doris said yes. Margaret said yes. They started small. In early April, Mary learned about a woman named Joyce, 19, who was working at the Sterling Room. Joyce had been at the motor pool before she disappeared. Mary found her through a civilian contact, a woman who cleaned rooms at a boarding house near Charing Cross. She said Joyce owed money to a man named Frank, and that Frank was not the kind of man you wanted to owe. Mary and Ruth went to the pub on a Tuesday night. They waited until Joyce came out for a cigarette. Mary approached her. She said her name. Joyce looked at her with hollow eyes and said she did not want any trouble. Mary said she was not there to cause trouble. She said she was there to help. Joyce did not believe her at first, but Mary kept talking. She said she knew about the debt. She said she knew about Frank. She said there was a way out. Joyce asked what way. Mary said they had a truck. They had forged papers. They had a safe place she could stay. All she had to do was trust them. Joyce cried. Then she said, yes. They got her out that night. They took her to a women's hostel run by a Quaker charity. Before they left, Mary gave Joyce a small silver bracelet. It was old and cracked, and it had belonged to Mary's grandmother. Mary said it was a token. She said if Joyce ever needed help again, she should show the bracelet to someone in the CWAC. Mary said there were others like her now, others who were paying attention. Joyce took the bracelet. She held it tightly. She said thank you. That bracelet became the symbol of the network. Over the next 6 months, Mary and her team rescued 33 more women. Some of them came from dance halls. Some came from private clubs. Some came from rooms above pubs, basements, attics. All of them had been told they owed money. All of them had been told they couldn't leave. Mary's method was always the same. First, she identified the woman. Then she made contact. She offered a way out. If the woman agreed, they moved quickly. Forged leave papers were easy to produce if you had access to the right typewriter and the right stamps. Mary had both. Buddy walk rotations meant that no woman walked alone at night. If someone was being followed, there was always another woman nearby to intervene. Midnight runs used borrowed military trucks. Ruth drove. Doris and Margaret acted as lookouts. Mary handled the extraction. The men who ran the clubs did not know what was happening at first, but by July, they started to notice. Women were disappearing in the wrong direction. Some of them were going to the police. Some of them were talking to journalists. The network was growing, and the men did not like it. On the night of August 12, 1943, Mary was walking back to the barracks when 2 men stepped out of a doorway. One of them grabbed her arm. The other one pressed a knife against her ribs. They told her to stop interfering. They told her she did not know who she was dealing with. They told her that if she kept helping the girls, something bad would happen to her. Mary did not move. She looked at the man with the knife. She said she knew exactly who she was dealing with. She said she had been keeping a record. Names, dates, locations, witnesses. She said if anything happened to her, that record would go to the military police, and to the newspapers, and to anyone else who might be interested. The man with the knife hesitated. Then he let go. The 2 men walked away. Mary went back to the barracks. She sat on her bunk and looked at the small cracked bracelet on her wrist. She had given away the original, but she had kept a second one, identical to the first. She thought about all the times she had been told to stay quiet, to stay small, to stay out of the way. She had never been good at that. By the end of 1943, the network had expanded beyond Mary's original team. There were now 12 women involved, spread across 3 CWAC units in London. They communicated through coded notes left in lockers, through brief conversations in the mess hall, through signals that looked like nothing to anyone who was not paying attention. They moved quickly, they moved carefully, and they moved without mercy. In November, the military police finally took notice. An investigation was opened into the clubs Mary had been tracking. Several arrests were made. 2 of the clubs were shut down. The men who ran them were charged with coercion, fraud, and exploitation. Some of them went to prison. Others fled. Mary was never questioned. Her name never appeared in any official report. The propaganda office still used her photo, still called her an Indian princess, still made her a symbol of Indigenous participation in the war effort. But the real Mary, the one who walked the streets at night and kept a notebook in her footlocker, was invisible to them. She preferred it that way. The war ended in May 1945. Mary was discharged shortly after. She returned to Canada and married a man named Albert Reid. They settled in Manitoba. She worked as a seamstress and raised a family. She never talked publicly about the rescue network. Most of the women she had helped did not know her real name. They only knew her as the woman with the cracked silver bracelet. In 1971, Mary attended a veterans reunion in Winnipeg. A woman in her 50s approached her. She said her name was Joyce. She said she had been trapped in a club in London during the war. She said a woman in uniform had helped her escape. She said she had never forgotten. She pulled back her sleeve and showed Mary a small silver bracelet. It was old and cracked. She said she still wore it. She said it reminded her that she had survived. Mary looked at her own wrist. She was still wearing hers. They did not need to say anything else. Mary Greyeyes Reid died in 2011 at the age of 91. Her obituaries mentioned her service in the CWAC. They mentioned the propaganda photo. They called her a pioneer. But they did not mention the rescue network. They did not mention the 34 women she saved. They did not mention the nights she spent walking through the dark streets of London, looking for women who needed help. That history was never recorded. The women who knew about it kept it to themselves. Some of them are still alive. Some of them still wear small silver bracelets. And when they do, they remember a young Cree woman who refused to be a symbol and chose instead to be something more dangerous. A witness, a rescuer, a force. The propaganda machine wanted her to be an image, but Mary Greyeyes Reid was never content to be just an image. She was a woman who saw what others chose to ignore. She was a woman who acted when others said it was not her place to act. And she was a woman who saved lives not because she was asked to, but because no one else was going to. That is the kind of heroism that does not make it into history books. It is too quiet, too careful, too easily erased. But it is real, and it matters. How many others like her slipped through the cracks, unknown and unrecognized?